Welcome to the Passionate Pioneer podcast. Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm passionate about supporting women who are feeling disillusioned and disappointed with their career and showing them what is possible when you follow your passion. Having your voice heard, finding your tribe of like minds, and being able to get support is so important when you don't know where to turn or who to talk to. I transformed my life from the corporate world to the coaching world, and I now empower women to follow my example and claim the freedom of choice to follow their heart, soul, and passion. So let's get started. Today I am joined by Stephanie Lanier. Stephanie's story is one of adventure, travel, and the great outdoors. Fed up with the education system, in 2019, she pulled herself and her children out of school, sold everything, and bought an RV to travel the US and Mexico. When COVID hit, her plans came to an abrupt end, and she took a job as a personal assistant for a well-known coach. Learning mindset techniques and retraining in EMDR therapy, she started to unpeel the layers of her childhood, which she had buried away, and she began to see all the patterns in her life. As an avid adventurer, problem solver, and out-of-the-box thinker, Stephanie started her neo-strategic business, which helps business owners find a new level of success through human design and other similar tools, so that both life and business are in harmony. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me, Beth.
Gosh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Well, so that was a lovely introduction.
All right, lovely. Thank you. Yes, I like to do an introduction for everybody, just so the listeners know as well a little bit of the background before we start going sometimes down the rabbit hole.
Yes. It's easy to do.
Absolutely, it is. So let's just start with, let's step back. So we started the story with the education system and, yes, and you leaving the education system. So let's start there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, well, what wasn't mentioned is I actually left the education system twice. And the first time it was because of a values misalignment and this idea that I knew I wanted to do. There was more. There was something else out there. But at the time, my bachelor's degree was in education. I had taught as a teacher in a high school and I taught Spanish. And so when I was trying to decide, what other opportunities there were, my mindset was very limited. I really thought I've kind of narrowed myself into education. So I either am going back to get a master's in, at the time I thought I needed more qualifications to get another job. So instead of leaving education and going straight into the workforce in a different, field, I left education and went to higher education and ended up with a degree in higher education administration because I thought, well, I always had this mind for business and I could see inefficiencies. Like inefficiencies were always something that I could pinpoint and pick out, no matter where I was. I'm the annoying friend that finds all the little problems and like, oh, by the way, the link in your website doesn't work. I'm the one who emails to let you know that. But I thought that higher education administration, I was still qualified for that, but it would get me into the administration aspect. So I would still be kind of sort of in business or qualified to do business things. And then I spent an entire year job searching. And by this point I had started this journey to get my master's with one child. And I ended with three children and a master's. So
wow.
Yeah. And my kids' family has always been a top value, high priority for me. And so I knew like ideally I would have loved to have been a stay-at-home mom, but at the time my partner couldn't support that. And so I needed to find a job, and going back into teaching seemed like the job that was the best next right step for me as a mom and someone who needed to bring in income. And so I went back into teaching, stayed for about actually this time I lasted 3 years before that same stirring that this is not where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
I love teaching. I love children. But there was a huge misalignment, and I didn't know to call it that. I just knew I felt it deep within in my soul. And so I continued on just striving more. Like my go-to back then was, well, I must just need to try harder.
Well, that's not the first time I've heard that on this podcast, Stephanie. So you're definitely not alone, right? Instead of digging deep to see what's going on with us, we just think, oh, I need to work harder.
Yes.
I need to get more qualifications. I need to work harder. I'm not doing enough, right? And
exactly. Yes. And I have loved listening to all the other women you've had on your podcast, because I've resonated with pieces and actually entire stories with some of them, but definitely bits and pieces of all their stories. There's a definite theme here. And so I'm striving, and I'm striving so much that I'm not like, I was trying to be a better wife. I was trying to be a better mom. I was trying to be a better teacher. And at the same time, I recognized, my biggest value was my family. And that really, I was failing there. Like I was having moments of, intense anger and temper flares with my children, especially first thing in the morning, trying to get them out the door and to school and work so I could I could get to work on time. And it was one morning I was rushing them out the door and, upset that we were late again. And I slammed our car door as I was scooting one of them up into the car. And I heard a crunch. And it was really cold outside that morning, and I had gloves on, and it didn't register. My glove was stuck in the door, and I pulled my hand out of the door thinking I was pulling my glove out of the door. Well, I pulled it out, and sorry to be gruesome, but blood was dripping from the glove. And I was I just my own finger.
Right. I'm guessing that was the moment you realized, oh, I'm not Superwoman. Look, I'm not a robot. I am.
Yes. I am flesh and blood.
I am
literally
flesh and blood, really. Yeah.
Yes.
It's the evidence.
It was my breaking point, my turning point, because it just all hit me that, oh, how ridiculous is this? Like, I am rushing my children out the door, not being the mom I want to be, to go to a job I don't even feel like I'm supposed to be at, to get there on time, which, to me, I do value other people's time, but I do also wish we lived in a more flowing society.
Yeah, I couldn't.
And I do believe you can create that.
Yeah.
To some extent on your own. Yeah. But at the time, I didn't. I had to be at work at a certain time. Anyways, long story short, I did not go to work that day. My children had to be taken to school by somebody else that day. I spent all day long, half the day in a emergency clinic.
Right.
And the doctor there didn't even know what to do with me. Like, he spent most of the time on the phone calling orthopedic surgeons to ask what they recommended do. And finally he got a hold of one that was like, based on what you're saying, she needs to come straight to us. Like, just send her with us. So he bandaged up my broken finger best he could. And I went and spent the second half of my day in an orthopedic specialist hand surgeon's office where they took x-rays and saw that I had not just broken the tip of my finger, I had shattered the little bones that make up the end of your finger completely.
Mm.
So like I don't even have that complete bone anymore. So that was my point where I was like, okay, something's got to change. And I went into a deep dive of just really self-exploration. But at the time, I didn't even know what that meant. But I did know that I needed to calm my nervous system down. And so my first step was to commit to just spend 10 minutes. I started getting up 15 minutes earlier every morning, and I sat in silence for 10 minutes. And I grew up Southern Baptist. And so at the time, what made sense to me was, you know, I'd always had questions. This is another part of the story. I always had questions about, you know, lots of things with organized religion, just lots. Everything from why are we raising money to build a bigger church when there's starving people in the world? Are we supposed to be giving them our money? To like, why are we told to listen to God's voice if every time we pray, all we do is talk? Like, how do you listen and talk at the same time? And so something inside me said that that was the answer, was to actually sit in silence and listen for God's voice. And it was really difficult because all those thoughts, you know, were intruding, and meditation was completely foreign to me at the time. It was actually a taboo topic. But sitting in silence wasn't. That made sense. And so I would read a Bible verse and then sit in silence. And as the thoughts came intruding in, I used the Bible verse, now I know the word, as a mantra to get me back on track and just focus on one thing. And that, it's just kind of like when I started doing that, then I stumbled on a book about gratitude and just finding gratitude in all the little things. It was, it's actually a Christian author, Ann Voskamp, has a book about gratitude. I can't think of the name right now, but this idea of, you know, look up, see the trees out your window, be grateful for the green leaves on them, the bright color, you know, a beam of sunlight shines down on you, be grateful for that moment of warmth and brightness.
Yeah. There are so many things, aren't there? There's so many things we can be grateful for. It's something I do with my clients. You know, when you wake up, just thank you for my sleep. Thank you for my comfortable pillow. Thank you that I've got a warm, cozy house. Thank you, I've got lights. Thank you, I've got my coffee. Thank you for the rain outside. It's very gloomy, but nature needs it. Gosh, look how beautiful nature is. You know, and you just you get on a roll, don't you? When you start with it, right? And it's just changing that, retraining your brain to the positivity, right?
Yes, retraining your brain. That is, this has been a whole path towards doing that. But yeah, I really think it was the starting the day with gratitudes, which was something that she also encouraged. You know, make that your first thought, is just be grateful. And then getting up, grateful that I had the opportunity to get up early, to go upstairs and, you know, be grateful for this new space, because we had just finished our upstairs. It was a empty attic space and we had finished it to be a livable space. So I had that livable, air-conditioned, quiet area where I could actually have my quiet time every morning in comfort. That really set things rolling. And I didn't get out of teaching until 2019, but there were several different things that led to the path that led me out. And they all started with those key habits.
Right. Yeah, I love that, Stephanie. I think it is so important, isn't it? Sometimes I just shake my body and I just wiggle my fingers and I go, oh, look, I've got hands and fingers.
Yes.
You know, I'm grateful for my hands and fingers, right? I've got a poorly finger at the moment.
Yeah.
And I can tell you I'm missing it, right? Because I'm trying to type and I'm typing I feel like with a disability, because I'm not typing with all of my fingers, right? So
I know. Isn't it crazy?
Yeah. But can I just step back a minute? Because I want to just talk about the God, when you said about God, because you know, there are certain words that come up for me. Selfish is one, God is another. And these words I've had to come to terms with over a long time. So when I was young, I went to church, and then I left the church. I was very dissatisfied and just confused. And, you know, it was very, what's the word I'm looking for? Two sides, two very different sides of people, you know,
the duality.
The duality, yeah, I just didn't like it. So, and then something happened with my parents and the church. Anyway, we all left. And then I was an atheist for a while. And it took me then a long time to get through I still didn't say God, because I just couldn't say the word. It just really had a bad connotation for me. It left a bad taste in my mouth, actually.
Yeah.
And then I started my spiritual journey, my spiritual awakening in my 20s. And then it wasn't until years later that I could actually say the word God, because it's so misused, and we just, you know, God will punish you, God will do. It's just.
Well, I will say I feel fortunate that I was brought up. I have a similar, you know, people say source or universe, and to me, I'm like,
any of those will do. The universe, creator, source.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, creator I can definitely go along with. To me, I was raised, you know, in Christianity. I did have this idea that deep within, and this is part of the issue, I always truly believed that God, source, creator, whichever name you want to use, I believe that it was a loving being. It was
Absolutely.
love. It's love. And so that was where the conflict came in, was like, why are we building all these structures? Like, why are all these rules put in place for us to love, you know, to join and commune in love? And so that was a big conflict for me. And that kind of ties into why being in the education system was conflicting for me, because it's a similar thing. It's like learning. Yeah. Learning is kids are born learning. Like, they start learning the day that they come out of the womb, and they stop doing that when we start putting them in these sterile environments and constricting them in a box. Yes.
Box, that's it, right?
Yes.
Try and put everybody in the same box, and not everybody wants to go into a square box.
Exactly. So funny thing, my first business, I tried to do like a Shopify store. I did a Shopify store. It was not very successful. I had all the things, and one of the t-shirts was like a fist coming through a box, and it said, "New eyes open, don't box me in."
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I really resonate with the "don't box me in."
Yeah.
And I think I heard it. Was it on it might have been on one of your episodes. It was on an episode recently where, in a podcast, where somebody said, you know, they felt like they were in a cage and didn't realize, like, they could open the door the whole time. Like,
sometimes we're in our own prison, aren't we? In our own man-made prison, right? That we've made, right?
That's right.
But yes, I'm all about that. Don't, you know, it's like, don't put baby in the corner.
Yes.
It's that kind of thing, isn't it? Don't put baby in the corner. Don't put me in a box, right?
Yep. Yes. Yeah. So, my grandfather and another retired individual who had gone, my grandfather bought an RV and had these big dreams of going and visiting the national parks and going and traveling when he retired. And he had been a successful entrepreneur. He had his own refrigeration and air conditioning business for many years, sold it, got the RV with these big plans to go traveling. And then I can't count the number of times he would lament to me that all these doctor appointments I have now, like, I just can't seem to go anywhere because of all these doctor appointments. And he and my grandmother really, they maybe took it out 10 times, took their RV out 10 times, and they went 3 hours down the road to a local beach.— And then another family friend, we were on the phone together. He had called me out of the blue, and it was in late 2017 when he did this. And, much after my finger incident. And he had just recently gone and traveled, did a whole tour of a lot of the national parks in Western United States. And those were places that I had just dreamed of going. I had never gone to any of our national parks other than the one in my home state. And he said something that stuck with me. He said, if you can figure out a way to do it now while you're young, and you can actually hike those trails and enjoy those, moments with your children, do it, Stephanie. And at the time I was like, yeah, right. Like I'm a teacher. I am not rich. Like, how am I going to make this work? You need money to do, that's a luxury for the rich, right? And
is it? That's maybe a mindset. It's a mindset thing, isn't it? Or is it? Yeah.
Something in me, when I had that thought, rebelled against it. And I was like, well, let's explore that a little more. And so being, the teacher I Googled it. I was like, who else is living in an RV? Who else is traveling, going to national parks with their kids? And I stumbled upon a handful of inspirational families who were doing this thing where they were traveling, not just part-time in their RV with their children. They had made a lifestyle out of it. And that intrigued me. And that became my new obsession. Like every Sunday, we would binge watch YouTube videos of these other families who were traveling full-time in their RV around the United States with their kids. And I started strategizing, which is, problem solving is where I go, and trying to figure out like all the different ways that we could make it work. And eventually in 2019, we had done everything needed to repair and remodel our house so we could sell it. And the amount that we were able to sell it for was enough to purchase an RV plus have 1 year's worth of my income. And we pretty much, for the year prior, my partner at the time, now ex, had up and quit his job in 2018. Like as I'm making these plans, trying to save up extra money so that we can have a savings to go on this trip, he decides to just quit his job and not get another one. Right. So I got another one and continued on with the plan.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, because when you did mention the word, you mentioned stumble twice, you see, and I stumbled upon, and I don't believe in in coincidence. It's all synchronicities. And when you start making a plan, you start putting your mind to something and you start taking the action steps, the universe conspires to help you. It really has no choice, because you're telling them this is what I want to do. And when you start taking that action, I get really excited talking about that, because when you start taking the action, the universe conspires to help you, because it has no choice. It's the law of attraction, right?
That's right. Yeah, you just you can't just I have an issue with the word manifest. Like there's the missing link is, yes, you can. I'm big on vision casting, and then creating a strategy to take step-by-step action towards your vision. Like that's how you manifest things.
Well, I have a vision board, Stephanie, so I'm sure you do too. I love vision boards. And then that way you can see the bigger goals, you can break it down into steps, you can, do all and then you can visualize the future, and you can visualize it becomes manageable step by step, right?
That's right. Yes, I actually am going to a vision board party, which is a new thing I'd never heard of, but it's such a cool idea. I think.
Fantastic. I love that.
Yeah. Because I think we feed off of other excitement, everybody else's energy. And so I love this idea that I'm going to be going into a room with a bunch of other women, and we're all, creating these vision boards for what we want to do in the future. And I think it's a great networking opportunity.
Brilliant.
I think it's, just great for female empowerment, co-empowerment.
Yeah, women supporting women at its
Yes.
best. Yeah, it's lovely. When you
Yes.
get together in a group, it's wonderful when you're all trying to, you're making your dreams come true.
That's right.
I
It
love it.
is.
Love it.
It is. And so back to the dream coming true. We sold everything, bought the RV, had 1 year's worth of income, and my poor mother, she worried so much.
Yeah.
A lot of our friends did. They were like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like, oh, this is exciting. And how are you going to live after this year? And I would just answer them honestly. I was like, I don't know.
No.
Like, what's the
And
next step?
just living in the present.
Yes, I was like, I don't know what the next step is, but this is my next step. Like, we are going on this adventure. We're going to give it our best shot. And the beautiful part of it is we did go on the adventure. We visited, I think it was 14 national parks and 10 state parks across the US in a span of 5 months, and then ended up spending 2.5 months with my in-laws in Mexico, in-laws at the time in Mexico. So my children got to experience all these places that I'd been dreaming about experiencing my entire life, and we got to do it together. They also got to be fully submersed in Mexican culture and be around their in-laws, which actually, yeah.
But just a fabulous all-round experience, really, right? So they get
really,
life experience rather than trying to fit into a box at school, basically, right?
Exactly. Yes. And we did a very much, I tried to do the homeschool. Like, I tried, even though I thought I was taking them out of school, I was trying to homeschool on the road with a very much a school mentality for the first month or so. And then I just saw it wasn't working. And I was like, what am I even doing? And so the rest of the time we took an unschool approach.
Right.
And the whole experience really helped me get even more aligned with my core values, and realize where, besides just working in a school system, I was out of alignment. And one of those was, just like you said, stop striving and just live in the moment. Like, just, enjoy the here and now, and recognize that these little individuals, they are learning just by being. And that's all they have to do is be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it goes back to being put in a box. We both, agree on there's many systems in society at the moment that are broken, that need updating. One of them is the school system, is the education system. We're expecting children just to sit in a box and learn and learn and learn and learn and learn. There's some things I'm really, I thought I'm never going to use this again, and I was right. I've never used it since, right? Why am I learning this? I don't need this, right? So, the Montessori schools and the other types of private schools, they're very, very good with the way that they educate, and they tailor their classrooms and their lesson plans to the students, the individual students. Public systems just put everybody together, lump everybody together, and it doesn't work. You need to learn life skills. And unfortunately, why is it that they've taken out all of the different schools, like cooking and woodwork and metalwork and what was the
like automotive
music.
Yes.
They've taken out all the creativity from the schools, and now you just have to sit and take exam after exam after exam after exam after exam, and you come out of school, you've no idea what you want to do, you've got no life skills. So
you're further and further away from your true self.
Yep.
That was something I learned through this whole thing, is if I go back to when I was a child, the dreams I had then, they're still the dreams I have now.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And some of actually a lot of the core traits that made me as a child are what I do now.
Right. You've just had that. You've just had the years of sort of peeling back the layers and getting back to who was I?
Yes.
Let me
Yes.
get back there, right?
Exactly. And it's funny you mentioned Montessori, because even when I was a freshman in college, my English professor, we had to do a project, and somehow I stumbled. It was the first time I'd heard about Maria Montessori and the Montessori method, and I was very intrigued by it. So that's what I decided to do my freshman research project on for English class.
Right.
I went and observed a Montessori school a couple times a week and just fell in love with the method for all the reasons you just mentioned.
Right.
And wrote my paper about it. And my English professor was like, Stephanie, this is your path. You're going to end up starting a Montessori school. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I don't want to start a school. That's not where I'm heading. But the fact that I am very passionate about an alternative education, I don't want to say system, alternative education methods or opportunities or pathways, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I'm very passionate about that. And that feeds into what I do now, because my whole thing is, so I do strategic annual plans for business owners. And the first thing we do is focus on them. And I actually have kind of started delving more into, I started out with just business strategy, neo-strategic business strategy. And the more I delve into businesses, the more I realize, like, if the owner doesn't know themselves well enough, then that's really where we have to start. So now I've tacked on neo-strategic life strategy, because I really found that if I look back on those 3 pivotal years of my life between 2019 and last year when I started this new business, the same strategy I used for my life is a very similar strategy that I was taught by the coach that I worked with. And I've now become certified in looking at the operations of a business and analyzing it and creating a strategy for optimizing it. I use a very similar approach to life. So I was like, well, I'll just combine them and do both. Because I am a firm believer, you're building a life, and your business is part of that, and your life should be part of your business. And like I mentioned before, this idea of everything should flow together. Like,
it is, isn't it? What's the difference between you and your brand, right? You and your business, there should be very little difference, right? You've got to blend the two together, right? And you went on this soul search, right? This soul search, I would say, right? And then you realized that it's not just business strategies that business owners need. They need that soul search. They need to peel back some of the layers, right?
Yes. And I think there's a huge awakening lately or currently, right?
Absolutely.
We just entered the age of Aquarius. So that's.
So I start singing in a minute. The age of Aquarius.
Yeah. And
exciting time, isn't it?
Right. I'm pretty new to all this, but I do know that the basis of the previous age was like following the leader, and the key to this age is knowing oneself and being true to oneself. And so that's really what I'm hearing over and over again, and seeing and witnessing and finding about myself too, that you have to know yourself first. And I'm not claiming that I 100% know that it's a process.
I think if anybody said I 100% know myself, you just laugh, because it's a never-ending story. We're ever evolving. There's always another layer to peel off, and then you get to the next one, and you start going, yeah, that's great, and then you're like, boom, and you're like, oh no, that's another layer I've got to take. Right? It's a never-ending story.
One thing I am learning, and that has been, so I've been revisiting some of the same lessons that I thought I was done with this, the past. Right. Yeah. Who am I to think that? But I'm human.
It's not done with you.
It's not done with me. But one thing that I did think that is coming home for me this past month is these may be similar lessons, but I am not the same person that went through them the first, second, or third time.
Right.
Like, what am I bringing to this fourth time that's different and new and can help me move through them either quicker, more efficiently, or, just the way I'm supposed to in this moment. So that's been big over the past month and a half.
Yeah, well, that's the mindset thing as well, isn't it? Which is, I'm really glad that you bring that in. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about the human design as well, because you do that, don't you? With that's the other side.
I am not a human design. I am not certified in that, but I do encourage anyone who works with me to, you can find out your free blueprint. You can get a free blueprint at, I think it's jovianarchive.com.
Right. Yeah. So you point them in the right direction, right? So
yes, I can point them in the right direction. And I have looked into it enough to understand the basics of, like, if you're a generator, then you're meant to be doing a lot. And if your job is more of a talking, you've got to monitor your energy maybe more so than some of the other types.
Yeah.
And so that it just gives me a little extra, it helps me with the strategy and how to communicate appropriately with the person I'm working with.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about this just before for those who are listening, that, I thought I was a manifesting generator, and I'm not. I'm an actual emotional generator, which really sits well because I have to sit and think about things, and it has to align with me first. I have to sit and think about it for, at least a few days for it to sit with me. And then if I'm still excited and happy about it, then I'm good.
Yes.
But I have to, emotionally, I have to feel good about it. My body tells me.
Exactly. And I'm the same. I'm also a generator. I am, so my numbers, for anyone who is already aware of it or wants to go find out more, I highly encourage it. I could geek out on it all day long.
As do I.
Yeah, that will probably be, I'm a lifelong learner. So delving more into human design and possibly getting my certification in reading charts would be my next certification I'm looking into.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you, actually. I think I'm interested in that too.
I think so. It's fascinating to me. Another one I've looked at are gene keys, which I have the book here, and that's something you can do for free. It's also fascinating. It kind of takes human design. One says that they take the other to the next level. Who knows? They're all just ways.
I think they're all helpful tools, aren't they, really?
There are helpful tools, and as you're getting to know yourself, especially for generators, especially for emotional generators whose I can't remember what it's called, but my way to react is to respond. So I'm supposed to wait for opportunities to come to me, which is really difficult as a business owner, to not try to go the other way with that.
Yeah.
But and you respond, and then you respond with your emotional response. Well, my response, I forget where I was going with that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's just about responding, right? I totally understand that. Listen, when I started the podcast, I had to think for, someone, it was somebody that suggested it, or you should, because I knew this year I had to get my voice out, and I was like, how can I get my voice out to more women? And then so I sat with it, and then I thought about it for a while, and then I was like, okay, I really like this. And then I started getting excited thinking about names, Pioneer, and then of course Passion and Pioneer just made sense.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I put it out there, I got a ton of women, like 20 responses immediately, and I was like, whoa, right?
Yeah, I totally resonated with that name. So
yes, you really got to just sit with it as an emotional generator. I just had to sit with it, and then once it's aligned with me, it's aligned with the universe.
Exactly. And the right people, the ones that are
right people will find me. Yes,
that's right. I completely agree. And that's, it takes a lot of trust. But if one thing with my whole 2019, leaving my job, fumbling through, trying to start one business, happened to shut it down because of divorce, and then making my way to this new business, which is actually way more aligned with who I am than the first one was. One of the things I tell people is like my religion was completely shattered through all the events, the personal events that happened in 2019 and 2020. And I'm sure I hear a lot of people went through similar experiences.
Right.
But my faith was made unshakable. Like I know that there's love is guiding me. I know, I use the word God, and for me, he is love.
Yeah,
he or she. Yes.
He or she. Yes, I agree.
That's right. He or she.
Very
good. Good catch.
My spirituality grew as well. Definitely, and it definitely helped throughout 2020 and 2021. And I actually moved to Italy. I came to Italy to look at this house in 2020 in the middle of COVID, when everyone said, "Don't travel, you can't travel, it's not allowed." And here I am, right? So I just emotional generator. I followed my feelings and followed what I wanted to do. So Stephanie, I just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Sure thing.
The first one is, in your opinion, why? We might have touched on this already, but just to clarify, why do you think as females we are afraid to step up and follow our passion? We're stuck in our jobs. Why do you think we're afraid as females to step up?
I do feel like I see this. I see hope on the horizon for this, but I feel like, especially for me, for so many generations, we have been constrained,
suffocated.
It has not been safe to do
That's
so.
Right.
It has not been safe. And as a female, the feminine wants to feel safe and secure. And so it's very scary to, follow your passion, especially when we have little children that depend on us sometimes, or other people. We put ourselves in situations where other people depend on us, and stepping out in our passions and taking risks puts not only our own lives in jeopardy, but whether we believe it or not, it really doesn't. But we have this thought that I'm putting someone else's life in jeopardy as well. Like it's not a risk.
A responsibility, isn't it? It's the responsibility for, for other people. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I also think we've just lived in a very masculine world for a very long time. And we're starting to bring in now the feminine qualities. Which is why we're seeing more people, especially women, having this awakening and realizing what the hell is going on with my life. I need to do something.
Speaking of patriarchy, like and masculinity, the whole entire school system that all little kids go through is very, very much aligned with that. And little girls are conditioned to be more obedient than little boys. Little boys are, able to act out because that's just who they are, and
encouraged to act out.
To, yes. That
little girls need to know who they are and what their place is, right? Which is the very old school thinking. Yeah. The banking systems are the same. Very male, very masculine dominated.
Yes. And most corporate structures, like most businesses, are still very much heavily masculine, and that is another thing that with what I do, I try to help bring in both. Like there's got to be a balance.
Yes, absolutely. Listen, the masculine is all about the action taking, and then the softer side, the feminine side, is to actually get in touch with who you are and find you, and do the soul searching, and do all of that, the human design and all that, digging into the intricacies of your mindset and those types of tools, right? And it's always a balance of both. You've got to have those, especially as a business owner.
That's right. And really for anything, you have to take action. Like you have to get up out of bed and go to the refrigerator to get food if you're going to eat, there's got to be a balance of both, but
So what advice would you give to the next generation of females, the younger females here, the 20s and 30s?
Yes, well, definitely my number one piece of advice always is invest in the time it takes to know yourself. And if you find that you don't know how to do that, or you have a hard time doing that, like just you don't invest the time to find the resources. So there are plenty of people out there. Like I tell people all the time, I will talk to you for 30 minutes for free, no money, no questions asked, if you need some guidance. And there's plenty of people who are willing to do the same thing, but you don't have to do that. Sit in silence for 10 minutes every day. Make a commitment to do that. Increase the time if you can, and be grateful for all the little things that come up in life. And I think when you start with that, the next steps, like we said, you stumble into the next right thing. The next steps become obvious.
Yeah.
They appear to you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I would say too, let go of the performance mentality. Like, oh my gosh, it's not about what you do. You are enough being the human being that you are.
Well, that's the perfectionism, isn't it? In most of us, that we're not ready because it's got to be perfect. And there's no such thing as perfect.
There's no such thing as perfect. And that's somebody else's idea of what's right, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Done is better than perfect.
That's right. Yes, that is a constant mantra of mine. I am a recovering perfectionist.
I'm a recovering procrastinator and perfectionist. So I've had duality going on.
Yes. And so I realized that a while back too. Like it was a drug for me, the procrastination and perfectionism, because it's like you get that dopamine hit from proving to yourself and everybody else that I can push it off for this long and I can still show up and rock it. Like, yeah.
Yes, that is a dopamine hit, isn't it? Right. Mm-hmm. I just come, sliding in at the last minute and a wonderful presentation. Look at me go, right? Woo!
Yes, exactly. And I think some of that too was my feminine trying to speak her own voice, because if we wait till the last minute, then we have nothing else to do other than depend on her to provide the message, right? Like if you improv everything, that's feminine, that's not masculine energy. So yeah.
Great. Fantastic. I don't think there's anything else to ask. I think the advice for the listeners, I think we've just given it to them. So some words of wisdom there today. Thank you.
And I would also say for younger generations, if you are raising children and you feel the call to stay at home and educate them yourselves, there is a way. There is a way. It can be done. And we need you to do that in order for the system to ever be upgraded, because until enough of us unplug from it, it's just going to keep chugging along and producing little individuals that no longer remember who they are.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie. What a great chat today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Beth. And thank you for having this podcast, having the courage to put it out there.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Thanks for listening today. If you would like to join me in telling your story about how you are quietly quitting your career and how you've got 1 foot out of the 9-to-5 rat race, or if you are a woman who has a story about already leaving the professional world to follow your passion and can offer inspiring advice, then please message me to get yourself booked in on an episode just for you. If you have a question for me or would like to know more information about how I can support you in one of my passion programs, please message me on Instagram, Facebook, or visit my website. You can also grab your free copy of my workbook, Your Passion Journey Starts Here, by joining my online community. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy this podcast and share it with your friends. Until next time, this is Beth Taylor at the Passionate Pioneer Podcast, signing off.